Hey, welcome back. In the previous video, we looked at shading a cube. If you haven't already watched that video, go ahead and take a look at it. We're going to continue our exploration with shading by shading some of the other primitive objects on a grid. And what I'll do for this example here is I will hide the layers for my cube and just simply use the same grid that I've already made just to go ahead and save some time. I'll come back and I'll use my pencil brush, which is right here. And I will now look at something like a cylinder. Okay, so let's just assume the sun is in the same angle for this case. And let's have the cylinder do something like this. We'll draw that ground projection, keeping in mind perspective and contours. Right, so that's our cylindrical shape. We can just maybe move it up. That's the beauty of actually having it on its own layer. We can move it up. And so now let's consider, I'll make a brand new layer. How is the light going to affect this cylindrical shape? So what we might see is something that looks like this. And again, I'm going to rotate my canvas, keyboard shortcut R, to make that connection here. This is the basic shape, but we are dealing with a rounded surface, right? So what's going to end up happening is we get past a certain point, this transition between light to dark is going to be very subtle. And the other thing too is because this is a rounded surface, the top part of this cylinder will receive the most light, but then as we start to go down, the shading on the object gets darker. So let's switch back now to our soft round brush. And here's another little bonus tip. If you've just finished using a brush, it should exist in your recent brushes option. So when I select that soft round brush, boom, you can see it right there. So I've got it handy, and I'm going to, instead of keeping, I've just drawn the lines that indicate the shadows, but I'm going to just make a new layer above that so I can get rid of those lines so no one has to see them. And in this particular case, what I'll do is I'll start shading, and I'm shading in the direction of the surface topology. You can either shade across like I'm doing, or you can shade, I guess I'll show you the other way too. You can also shade like this, right? So if you've got your contours, that might make more sense, but really it's up to you. You can make it look round either way. So notice what's happening here is as I'm getting to the bottom of this area, it's getting darker. And that's just controlled by the amount of pressure that you're placing on your tablet. And if I need to go to a darker value, so be it. And again, you can always adjust your brush size as needed. And so the transition from light to dark becomes much more apparent. So this is the area that is not receiving as much light. It might receive some bounce light from the ground around us, but it is it's going to have some shading on it. We might also see this end cap here. It might also have some shading. I'll just make the brush a little bit bigger, but it might be more uniform, right? Because this is a flat surface. And on the ground, our cast shadow, it will be darker right here. And as we get further away, and this is where I'm going to have to rotate the canvas, guys, to make it more comfortable to draw, switch back to the brush, and just essentially want to make it lighter as I go. If you hear that creaking noise, that's my desk. Can't help that. And I'll maybe make a lighter value over here. So the bottom line is it's darker on the edge. It's not receiving any light whatsoever. And after this is done, of course, I can always toggle off the the layer that contains the sketch of the shadow, right? And then alternatively, I can also come back in with the polygon lasso tool and just clean that up to make it look nice and neat, like so. But I'm going to leave this edge. I'm not going to clean that edge up because I want that transition to be, you know, more seamless. So you can play around with that and then make this, you know, I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Like so. So that's shading a cylinder. Now, there's also the upright cylinder, works the same way. You always want to establish where your light source is, and you want to think about where the light is going to shine, right? And if that's difficult to visualize, you might have some household objects that are near you that you can use with a desk lamp, for example, to study the lighting. I think looking at something lit is going to be far more valuable than trying to imagine what it might look like in your head. So having references or having objects that you can control the light on can be a very helpful tool when you're shading and casting shadows. So I'll see you in the next video. We'll talk about shading a cone.